Hello, everyone. It's Fred again from Notes of a Nomad. I believe this is number 47. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the fact that I grew up in Thunder Bay and then moved away and some of those changes. Now, on the map that we have, Thunder Bay is on the head of Lake Superior. I think I can highlight it here on the map. You might see it. And I lived there till I was 13 when my dad was transferred to Vancouver, which, as most of you probably know, is on the west coast of Canada on this side. And I was there for about 6 years, finished my high school, went to university for a couple years till I guess I was kicked out of university. That's another story. And then I ended up traveling for about a year, ending up in South Africa, living there for 22 years, working on the gold mines, as I've mentioned in previous videos. Returned to Canada in 1985 and lived for 23 years in Toronto, which is on, as you probably know, on Lake Ontario in southern Ontario. And so I've had a lot of changes in my life because in 12 years ago, I left and came back to the West Coast and have now been ensconced mainly on Vancouver Island and the Victoria area. So those are the main moves, and the fact that my life has changed a lot since I grew up in Thunder Bay. So I want to talk a little bit about Thunder Bay, and I've recently been speaking to some of my cousins in Thunder Bay, and some things have come to remind me about it. On the map, you'll see a lot of red, which is the Canadian Shield. It is a unique geographical part of the world, and if you're a geologist, I think that you find it very fascinating. So I won't go into the geology of the Canadian Shield, but needless to say, mining is a big part of it. There's a lot of mines on the Canadian Shield, from diamonds have been found up in the Northwest Territories to gold and silver and, cobalt and uranium, etc. So it's a fascinating geological part of the world. But Thunder Bay has one item that I'd like to show you, which is sort of well known if you're in Thunder Bay, maybe not so well known if you're not. It's called the Sleeping Giant. Just try and expand this a little bit. Hopefully I can. There we are. And whoops, that was too much. There we go. The Sleeping Giant is, well, the Ojibwe say it's a giant that actually, I think it was a spirit that was called N0MAD, I think. And that's the head, is where my cursor is, and then the chest, and then the rest of the body and the legs. And you can see this very well from Thunder Bay. It's sort of the landmark. It's out in the Lake Superior. And I think there's another picture that might show it even better. Let me expand this. They're not high quality, but it gives you an idea. It actually says that part there is the Adam's apple of the giant from its head and so on. So it's the reason, according to the Ojibwe legend, that Nana Bijou was turned to stone was there was a silver mine that the Ojibwe wanted to keep a secret of where the source of their silver was, and if the white man ever found out where it was, then Nana Bijou was turned to stone. So that's the Ojibwe legend about the sleeping giant. I mention that because in my recent discussions with some of my cousins, I realized I'm of that generation, one of the few, if only, in my family who ever left. I was speaking to one cousin, and her and I were in grade 1 together in school, and she indicated that she has traveled very little and not seen much of the world. In fact, probably not even seen a lot of Canada. And on that map, probably hasn't been off the Canadian Shield very much. Whereas when my dad was transferred and I was the age of 13 to Vancouver, it changed my life. And I ended up, as I've indicated, living in many places around the world. And I think that's been a very positive experience for me. I don't know why the people of my generation tend not to move, but none of my cousins of my age, I think, really left Thunder Bay. The ones I speak to, anyway, are all in Thunder Bay and spent their whole lives there. So that brings me to one of my favorite topics, which I've spoken about before, and that is change. And I want to talk about the fact that you change means you have a lot of issues and challenges, which means you must solve them. And how do you solve them? Well, I believe if you create routines, and those are how you solve it. I'll give you an example of a routine that helped me and helped others solve a problem. When I was in South Africa, I was studying for what was called the Mine Manager Certificate. It's a very challenging exam. It takes a lot of studying, a lot of work. And I read an article and it said habits can work for you. And I made it a habit that certain times of the week, certain hours of the day, I would be studying for my Mine Manager Certificate. And as a result, if I wasn't sitting down in front of the books at a certain time, I would feel guilty because I'd say, oh, it became a habit, it became a routine. I managed to get my Mine Manager Certificate at a relatively young age. And I remember telling someone who was also studying, I said, this is how I did it. Why don't you try it? A few years later, he came back to me and said, thank you so much. I said, thank you for what? He said, you told me about the habit and the routines, and I've now got my Mine Manager's Certificate as well. So there's a good example of how habits, that if you want to lose weight, you create positive habits. You want to eat healthy, you want to learn how to play the piano or a musical instrument, you have a routine that you work, and that's how you solve problems. So anyone wonder why I do this stuff and why I tell these stories and things? I've said before, and it really is for two reasons. One is my family's scattered around and they often wonder, how's my dad doing? Where is he? What's he doing? Is he still alive? So this is one say, yeah, he's still making videos, so he's still okay. He's still doing something. And the second reason is my grandchildren might want to say, oh, what did my grandpa do? Oh, he was born in Thunder Bay and he moved around the world and he lived different places and he worked on the gold mines and et cetera, et cetera. So that's the second reason I do this. And some of the things I've learned in life are the things that change is good. I believe that change, and whatever change you want to make, doesn't have to mean you have to move. You can stay in Thunder Bay and still do changes. And how do you solve them? Well, those changes create issues that you must then say, how do I solve it? And I believe routines is one of the best things that can have a powerful impact on your life. So with that, I will say adios, au revoir, wishing you and your family and friends lots of love and laughter. And the new year is coming, so wish you all the best, full of lots of love and laughter throughout the year 2021, which is almost here. Bye for now from Fred and Notes of a Nomad.